Hey everyone, welcome back to Nutrition Made Simple, a video series that we created that takes a look at ideas surrounding natural health topics, and then we break them down into easy to understand and actionable steps. I'm Brian Strickland. This is Chris Wilson. He's a staff member here at Nutrition World. And for this month, we've been taking a look at some of Chris's expert specialities, including mold, Lyme disease, detoxification, and another one of his that he really loves to focus on is gut disorders, and that's what we're going to talk about today. IBS, specifically irritable bowel syndrome, is something that really is a disorder that you're hard-pressed to find somebody that you know that hasn't been affected by it. It's pretty common. It's widespread. But the reasons and some of the symptoms and some of the things that you can do about it may be a little vague, and that's what we wanted to do today, is provide some clarification for some of those things. So, Chris, to start us off, can you just walk us through really what IBS is and some of the possible causes?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very common disorder that affects millions of people, but want to preface, just because it's that common doesn't mean that it's normal. Yeah. And a lot of times people think that there's conditions going around that are very common and it makes them normal and okay to accept, and that's not the case here. It is a dysfunctional system of your gut, as the name suggests, irritable bowels. And I always remember from a kid my dad having irritable bowel syndrome, and I didn't know what it was. I just know that he couldn't tolerate Mexican food, and anytime we did go to a restaurant or any place out to eat, it was always asking the waiter, or not the waiter, but the host at the hostess stand, hey, can we get a table to the nearest restroom, so that if anything were to happen, he could get up and he could go take care of duty when duty calls. Yeah. No pun intended. But yeah, I think that really, to understand IBS, it's a multitude of factors, making it yet again another multi-therapeutic assessment, because it's a cluster of symptoms that can range from a multitude of things. And really, when you think about health, does anyone really ever think about their internal terrain, or what I explain to people is their gut garden? You know, because most people can understand the garden in their backyard that maybe their grandparents had, or maybe people who are into gardening they have in their backyard. The same concept is kind of like in the inside of our guts. You know, we have this ecosystem, this terrain of microorganisms, and there's a very diverse range of these microorganisms. Even a lot of studies point to say that they outnumber us. The genes that we have and the cells that they have outnumber us, and that we're more bacteria than we are human. If that's true or not, but regardless, there are a bunch of different microbes that live in us and among us. And however, it's kind of like your garden. You know, whenever it's unhealthy, you have a lot of weeds, and you have not a lot of nutrients in the soil, and so that is going to rob from the nutrition in your fruits and vegetables that you're trying to grow and feed your family. Same thing with the pathogenic or unhealthy bacteria that are in your gut. Yeah, you want some, but you don't want an overabundance, because when you have an overabundance of the unhealthy critters down below, they'll kind of overcrowd out the healthy bacteria and displace those, and that's where we get this term gut dysbiosis, where we have an unhealthy balance. And that's really kind of what irritable bowel syndrome is it's an unhealthy gut terrain on the inside, and there's many factors that contribute to the development of IBS, like food sensitivities, being afraid of what to eat because you react to almost every food under the sun, gut infections, or gut pathogens. That's probably the one of the bigger ones that I always see, and I always recommend people test, don't guess. And the GI map is a phenomenal test that I love to look at when assessing a person's microbiome, because it will show if there is an imbalance of intestinal organisms, if there's any pathogenic, meaning harmful organisms that are there within. And leaky gut is a sure driver, because that's going to perpetuate this vicious cycle.
Yeah. What about stress? Is that something that's common as well?
Oh my gosh, stress. That's almost like a, yeah. I mean, as we always say, you know, I'm pretty sure everyone's familiar with like the doctor saying, "Hey, just work on your stress levels," and it's like, oh come on, you got to be kidding me, right? But I guess it's the type of stress, and there's multiple forms of stress. So just real quickly to put this analogy out there, your body responds to stress no matter where the stress is coming from. So if you're backing out of your driveway and the little boy next door is riding his tricycle on the sidewalk and you don't see him until the last minute, that's an initiated stress response, and you slam on the brake pedal, and it's like this instantaneous reaction where your fight or flight mode goes in, right? And then it doesn't come back into balance until you know that that little boy's okay and that you didn't create any harm. So once you get out of the car and check on him and he's still riding along and paying no attention to that car that almost squished him, you're like, kind of take a deep breath, and you're like, oh my goodness. And it's like, okay, everything's back to normal. I can reset and get on with my day and go to work. Well, the same thing is when you're merging on the traffic and highway. If a car cuts you off, that's a stressor. Poor relationship stress, that's a stressor. Or poor relationship status, I'm sorry. Money, job stress, you name it. Any type of these stresses that all of us experience that are all of a part of our everyday life. A fight with the boss or the spouse or unruly kids or just being unhappy. These are all stressors that your body's reacting to just like it did whenever you were backing out of your driveway. So the problem therein lies chronic stress. It's this low-grade chronic stress response that we don't necessarily know how to shut off. And so when you're in that fight or flight response, so we have the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. Those are two different branches, right? Fight or flight is what we call the sympathetic, and that's when you're stuck in that always fight or flight response. And the blood is directed away from the digestive system because it's not thinking about rest and digest, that parasympathetic response. It's thinking about running away from a stressor, or it's thinking about fighting for survival. And we want to be in that rest and digest mode. So practicing some deep breathing exercises, especially before you're eating a meal, can really help you kind of calm down and get into that parasympathetic tone to help you better digest your food. Because the old cliche about you are what you eat. It's no matter you are what you eat, but you are what you can absorb from what you eat. Because I think leaky gut is, in the last 10 years, it's become more of a well-known thing, especially among conventional doctors. They're starting to understand it. Now, several of them still don't know it, but more are. And that, again, perpetuates this whole cycle. And we want to, repair that breach in our gut. And stress is a major contributing factor to IBS, to kind of say the least.
Yeah, for sure. So IBS, multiple causes, goes without saying, and just like the causes, the symptoms can manifest in different ways as well. Can you walk us through some of the most common ones?
Yeah, so even just with gut dysbiosis, or that imbalance of gut bacteria, abdominal pain, cramping, bloating, gas or flatulence, constipation, diarrhea, or even an alternating between both of those, constipation, diarrhea. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both. And then that can lead to other things too, because maybe people don't recognize the severity of the abdominal pain. Maybe it's a nuisance or an annoyance, and that's why only 50% of people affected by IBS really seek out medical help, because they can kind of tolerate it. It hasn't got to the point of overwhelm where they really want to seek out help, and it hasn't gotten bad. So
it just kind of becomes a normal part of daily life.
A normal part of daily life that they've learned how to manage until it gets to the point to where they want to, either A, seek out conventional medical help and take medications, unless they just, want to watch a video like this and learn about the deeper rooted issues. But, bad breath is a sign, because that can indicate, in bad breath that's not taken care of by like gum or mints or brushing your teeth, halitosis. And that's usually due to like an H. pylori overgrowth, which is kind of a commensal organism, but we won't go into all that. But brain fog, poor memory, those are some of the other symptoms. And most people that I talk to that come into the store, Brian, have some form of gastrointestinal distress, have brain fog, or some form of cognitive impairment, mild cognitive impairment, and are tired or fatigued. Yeah. And those are, like, who doesn't have those symptoms, in our U.S. population today? And so, and mood issues, anxiety, depression, and even irritability. Somebody or a lot of people have some of those forms. And you think of the different systems in our body that are affected. Our immune system, we have autoimmunity. That's really at the crux. Gut infections like an H. pylori overgrowth or candida yeast, or other pathogenic bacteria that are crowding out the good bacteria. A poor diet and chronic stress. And those three kind of kick the door open to autoimmunity, whether that's Hashimoto's, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, autism, ADD, ADHD, osteoarthritis. I'm trying to think of some other ones. Even atrial fibrillation now is looked at as an autoimmune condition because we looked at leaky gut, and then there's these little muscle fibers that eventually break down, and the same muscle actin that's in the gut is also in the heart tissue, and those same fibers can all break open and allow things that are circulating to the bloodstream to kind of come in and attack different enzymes in the heart, and all of a sudden now you got palpitations and you've got tachycardia, and you get leads to good grief. Leads to AFib.
That's crazy. I mean, it seems like such a vicious cycle because, I mean, like you said, who doesn't have stress in their life? And stress is the causation of so many different health issues, including IBS. And then that leads to no sleep, and then you don't sleep well, and then that causes a slew of problems. So obviously this is a cyclic thing that can be devastating to somebody's health. So with that being said, what are some of the things that people can do about it? I mean, obviously diet is an important factor, so elimination diets could be a possibility, but I mean, what are some of the common things or your recommendations that people come to you for IBS?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I, again, want to preface that testing, don't guess. That's like my motto, because I don't want people to waste their money, and a lot of people have already spent a lot of time, effort, energy on the guessing game where they've tried this supplement, that supplement, they gone to this doctor, that doctor, and it kind of destroys their ability to trust other people because they've kind of been burnt, so to speak. But testing is a way to get things on paper in black and white to show you what's going wrong down in the gut. And there's a lot to get into in regards to the testing, but just know that it certainly helps put a program into actionable steps when you can see that, hey, I'm missing keystone strains of bacteria in my gut. Like my wife, for instance, was missing keystone strains in her gut because she was born C-section. So she didn't get to inherit the microbiome of her mother. Instead, she came into contact with like skin to skin, and staph grows on skin, and it showed that she had high levels of staph, but she also had parasitic infections too, like Giardia, which is a waterborne parasite. And these all play into a person's physiology of who they are today. So you have to take in consideration your entire health history, because your health begins in the womb of your mother. So if your mother smoked the entire 9 months that she was pregnant with you, that's going to play an effect into your overall health. If you were a C-section baby, or you bottle fed, were you breastfed, were you on rounds of antibiotics, these are all things that play into the development of your future self later on in the years.
Right.
And if you have no knowledge of anything to do when you're a young kid, just wanting to drink Capri Suns, Dr. Peppers, and eating Fritos and Doritos, well, I mean, it's really not your fault. You're just kind of uninformed. And the testing is the first place I always start. And then again, obviously with that health history that I just kind of laid out there, I love to know everyone's story. So usually on that first meeting, I just want to listen and hear the person's story. I just want to know how they went from point A to point B to today, and what they've done that hasn't worked, who they've seen, and these kind of things. And then natural strategies to overcome that don't require medicines, or maybe a person is on a medicine, and I'm not saying that medicines are a bad thing. It's just not it's not what we want to do for the long haul. They should be there as a crutch to help us get our life back together, to piece it back together. And so it's not to demonize conventional medicine.
And obviously those can affect our gut health as well.
They can, Antibiotics, which are passed out like candy, they it's like dropping nuke bombs down inside on your gut. It destroys both good and bad health. Right. And while it can eliminate a potential invader, oftentimes people have a recurring issue because they never re-inoculate themselves with probiotic therapy or healthy bacteria to help build up the strengths of their internal terrain, wherein lies 80 to 85% of your immune system, right down there in the gut. And so looking at the testing and kind of getting an idea of what's going on inside, looking at their health history and kind of putting together and looking for all the red flags throughout their life that have kind of brought them from point A to point B along that journey will help me make my clinical impression on that person, and then also to help with their therapeutic protocol using nutrition. you know, using healthy foods, prebiotics and probiotic type foods, and then cleaning up the diet, making sure that we're making smart choices. A low FODMAP diet shows benefit for IBS people who suffer with IBS. There's studies 10 studies that had 511 participants here that a low FODMAP diet was associated with, and overall, they had some significant, you know, improvements in their condition. So utilizing specific diets that people can benefit from. Those are several of the pieces that I use to help people overcome their health challenge.
Man, that's crazy. I mean, it's such a common issue that, I mean, seems unnecessary in some ways. But again, I mean, we can't be perfect all the time. We can't have perfect diets all the time. And obviously, we're all structured differently. So thank you so much, Chris, for this awesome information. If people want to contact you, how can they do that?
They can come into the store here, Nutrition World in Chattanooga, check it out, ask for me, or they can email me, Christopher@nutritionw.com, and we can create a dialogue there in emails where we can schedule consultations or come in and, you know, go from there.
Perfect. Well, that's going to wrap it for this week, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. We hope that you have a great week, and be sure to like and subscribe for more content just like this. We try to put out a video every single week, and we really hope that you find these helpful. Take care. We'll see you next time on Nutrition Made Simple.